Joining me now, three of my favorite radio talk show hosts in all the country here in New York. Errol Louis, WWRL. Errol is also a columnist for the New York Daily News and a contributor to this broadcast and a pal. Steve Malzberg of WOR Radio. Great to have you with us, Steve. And in Houston, Dan Patrick of KSEV in Houston, KVCE in Dallas, also a Texas State Senator. And let me just ask you first, Dan Patrick, you say your listeners have pointed out the Obama administration is starting to look like a redo of the Clinton administration, but is that all bad?
We don't know yet if it's all bad, but I don't think many of us were impressed by the Clinton administration, and particularly the people in that administration. You know, Clinton got a lot of credit for an economy that they deserve no credit for. It was the dot-com bubble, and Clinton rode that.
But it sure looks pretty good right now, doesn't it?
Well, it sure looks good, but I don't know that he gets credit for it. But I think a lot of the listeners and a lot of Americans are saying, what is this about change? We're seeing the same people come back from the Clinton administration in many positions. And, Lou, I think the other thing that's concerning to Americans is this entire financial meltdown has been caused in large part by government and Wall Street, and we see the same people changing positions or staying in positions that are now trying to solve it.
Well, one thing about it. Troubling. What do you think, Steve?
Well, I think, you know, Robert Rubin, a lot of these people that Obama has chosen are disciples of Robert Rubin, and isn't he the guy in charge of Citibank and Citigroup?
Right.
And ran that into the ground? I mean, it's like the same characters just shuffled around. And, you know, the government, they have no clue, I agree with you, what they're doing. They take it all and put it on a plate like spaghetti, throw it against the wall and say, oh, let's try this. And this is the same government that wants to run our health care, wants to radically change education. The government can't handle this. They can't be trusted to handle what we cherish most of all, and that's, I hate to change something, but that's our health care. The government doesn't know what they're doing in this case. They don't.
Well, they certainly haven't demonstrated it. The problem I've got, Errol, is that we're sitting here talking about significant money, unprecedented levels of money being thrown, 60% of our GDP being thrown at an issue that would have reasonably been expected to be, let's say at most, 5% of our GDP in a recession, and that's a deep, deep recession. How have we gotten this far afield in terms of public policy on the economy?
I think what Dan and Steve said is right, which is that we've got the same cast of characters. There are, very much like the three economists you just had on, there are other voices that are out there. We're just not hearing them. You know, when we got locked into this downward spiral of thinking that you had to have an MBA or an economics PhD or 1,000 years in government in order to be able to sit at the table and talk about this problem, I think, you know, you go off the rails right there. There's a lot of creative thinking out there. There's community-based financial institutions. There are creatively thinking economists out there who can't get a hearing. They don't get invited down to Washington to talk about what we're supposed to do.
Let me say right now, Bill Isaac, the former head of the FDIC, said at the outset that the United States government, through the FDIC and the Treasury Department, with its approval, calling for an emergency order, should be putting money into the balance sheets of these failing banks and financial institutions, which would give them a 10-to-1 leverage for every dollar of taxpayer money put there.
And the FDIC knows this, because when they have to take over an institution, the first thing they do is kick out the board. Yeah. You know, I mean, they really take over the institution. They know how to do a bailout.
Let me ask you this, Dan Patrick. What happened to all those free market, at any cost Republicans who said, you know, we're not going, you know, for crying out loud, the GOP platform says no bailouts because we know it doesn't work.
Well,
I mean, what's going on?
Well, it's not the people who support the bailout. It's the elected officials who are not representing the people in the Republican Party. That's one of the reasons the Republican Party is in trouble, Lou. The people don't support these bailouts. They believe in free markets, and if you succeed, you get a reward, and if you fail, you pay the price. You know, most people don't want to see General Motors fail, but they also don't want to take their tax dollars and bail out a company that's had bad ideas and bad management.
I want somebody to explain this to me, Steve. Yeah. Anybody, all right? How is it that everybody wants General Motors and Ford in particular to come back with a plan for how they're going to spend $25 billion, but the Federal Reserve and the Treasury throw $8 trillion at Wall Street and the banking industry, and they don't even want to get a greeting card from them?
No, you're absolutely right.
I mean, what is that?
It's the epitome of hypocrisy. But, you know, going back to your question about where's the Republicans, where are the people, you know, we were told, remember, think back to the original, the credit market is frozen. If we don't do something by this Monday, by this weekend, oh my gosh, we're all going to die. Everything's going to freeze up. So they passed this extensive bailout, and then we're told.
Wait, Steve, we got to add one thing.
Yeah.
even with that fear-mongering, they knew that they couldn't get it through unless they added $150 billion in pork.
No, absolutely. But the point was, if we don't do it now, the markets, nobody will get credit forever. Then they tell us after it passes, it's going to take 6 months to take effect. And we're still in the same position. Banks have money now. They won't lend money out. What is going on here?
Yeah. Lou, how did we get in a situation where we give the banks the money and we allow them to hoard the money when we know what we need to do is get the money out into the hands of the public so they can have student loans, car loans,
part of the answer, and we'll explore that right after this commercial break, but I believe part of the answer is Hank Paulson found himself duty-bound to take care of his buddies on Wall Street first. We'll be back with our panel in just a moment. And a reminder to vote in our poll tonight. The question is, should companies receiving taxpayer bailout money be required to keep jobs here in the United States? A novel idea, yes or no? Cast your vote at LouDobbs.com. We'll be right back with the results. And coming up at the top of the hour, Campbell Brown, no bias, no bull. Tom Foreman filling in for Campbell. Tom, what are you working on?
Thanks, Lou. In just a few minutes, new developments on tonight's important breaking news. We're hearing that Defense Secretary Robert Gates will be staying on for at least one more year. Very important in a time of war in Iraq and Afghanistan. President-elect Obama apparently is making good on his promise to keep at least part of the Republican team on. Also tonight, we'll shine our no bias, no bull spotlight on those who are already getting government handouts, even though a lot of people say they don't need it. Plus, the important court case that gets to the heart of why people do things online that they would never think of doing in public, a conversation you have to hear. I'm Tom Foreman. We'll be back, Lou.
Look forward to it, Tom. Thank you. And a reminder to join me on the radio Monday through Friday for the Lou Dobbs Show. Tomorrow's guests include Steve Forbes, president of Forbes Magazine, Harvey Eisen, chairman of Bedford Oak Partners. We'll be talking about this economic crisis. Go to LouDobbsRadio.com to get the local listings for the show in your local area. We'll be back with more with our panel, answering the important questions of how did we get this far out of control in Washington, D.C. Well, we're back with Errol Louis, Steve Malzberg, and Dan Patrick. Let me turn first, if I can, to Dan Patrick. This auto industry bailout, we got to have it. There's just no question, whatever the reason is, national security, you name it, 3 million people lose their jobs. We got to do something. I don't get why Congress is so uptight about this idea after basically signing on for $8 trillion. Do you, Dan?
Well, I do get it from this standpoint, Lou, is until we see a plan that says they're going to change their business model, all we're doing is just bridging the gap until they eventually go bankrupt. What I would rather see, and I'm not in favor of any of these bailouts, but what I would rather see is if we're going to bail out someone, let's bail out the middle class. That you had a story earlier in this show that's being hammered. Let's give each family a voucher for $5,000. It can only be used if they buy a new automobile or a new truck. That will start moving inventory. Your idea of 13 months ago that we need to buy up these foreclosure homes. Let's rework those loans so there are no more foreclosures. We need some practical thinking down on the Main Street level that helps the average American family. That's what we need to help get this economy rolling. Once the economy gets rolling, everything takes care of itself. But I'm tired of giving money to Wall Street, tired of seeing Congress have no transparency where this money's going. Let's put it in the pockets of the people. You know, we got here, Lou, because once upon a time the saying was we're spending our children's money and then our grandchildren's money. This government is now spending our great-grandchildren's money, and the factor of inflation and debt is going to destroy this country.
Getting back to the bailout of the auto industry, I know what my callers resent the most and what I resent is that we're going to pay, and Congress, Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid never talk. They say the CEOs have to restructure, the company has to restructure, the shareholders have to suffer, but they never mention the United Auto Workers. We're still paying health care for retired workers and their families for the rest of their lives. I mean, if that doesn't change, I don't want to give them a penny.
You think the Democrats are going to take on the union?
Go ahead.
Well, they have no choice.
I don't think so.
Here's the Gordian knot, right? I mean, it's the pension and the health care benefits that in other countries are paid for by the government. That adds $1,500, relatively speaking, to the price of an American car.
How much health care we could have bought for $8 trillion?
All of it. All of it for everybody.
I mean, we could buy a car for every man, woman, and child in this country for what we're spending here. We're being played for idiots, and we're still not answering the moral question. And that is, what are we doing and why? And why have we let 1 million homes be foreclosed upon in this country, another 1 million of our fellow citizens facing foreclosure, and have a discussion about Citibank and their officers remain in their jobs, the same at AIG and every one of these institutions, and their shareholders are bailed out while the taxpayer is on the hook. I mean, for crying out loud, how much dumber can it get?
We didn't even get a stake with Citibank. We got nothing.
I mean, it can get dumber. The only light at the end of this tunnel I see is if a significant amount of this bailout money ends up in infrastructure, something that's of value that people can really use, we won't have lost everything.
That's going to be the last word.
Lou,
thank you very much, Errol. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Lou.
Appreciate it. Up next, political correctness run amok. We'll tell you which institution is banning all holiday decorations. Stay with us. You're going to be aggravated, but stay with us anyway.